Do you think this makes ultimately President Trump stronger, or does it damage him?
Well, it remains to be seen in terms of the election whether it damages him. Certainly, I think from the historic perspective, it does damage him. As you just outlined, he will most likely be the third president ever impeached in United States history. The United States has only impeached 19 officials since 1788. Most of them were federal judges. 2 of them were presidents. This would make Donald Trump the 20th person to be impeached or have the powers of impeachment used against him. There's no question that would remain a stain on his presidency. In terms of the politics, though, as your reporter pointed out, it's a bit early days to determine how this is going to affect the electoral outcome in 2020. There's a lot of time between now and then. But I've no doubt that even though the process, as your polls report on the polls commented, even though it's split 50-50, time is the factor here that will determine how the election is going to go. Not just the opponent that Trump will have, but what transpires between now and November. In my experience in the past, that's an enormous amount of time, and a lot of factors can come up during that. We saw that in the 2016 election with 2 weeks out from the election. The former FBI director, James Comey, announced that he was re-investigating Hillary Clinton. So those sorts of bombshells that can happen, whether they're natural disasters or they're political things or whether they're positive things. The other thing to look out for in the new year will be the economic record of the government. Yeah. What key indicators are going to be reflected in the months ahead.
And Kim, given that if this does go through, this impeachment vote, what is a Senate trial going to look like then? Is it going to be a swift one or perhaps a longer trial, given that the White House seems to prefer that?
Yes, well, the president did say he would like to see the whole thing litigated again. He thinks he'll get a fair representation under a Republican-controlled Senate, and of course he will. But obviously the Senate leadership doesn't agree that it would be in his best interest to keep relitigating these issues. The Democrats, of course, would love to see some of the people that the White House has prevented from testifying under the House Intelligence Committee investigation to be heard. That would include the acting White House Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney. It would include the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, right. The Vice President, Kim? And, of course, John Bolton. Yes.
Kim? Yeah, Kim, apologies. We just had to interrupt you just very, very slightly here because we are just getting word that the House is beginning this historic vote. They've concluded the debate that's taking place in Washington. At the same time, President Trump, at the separate rally, is also talking about how he doesn't really feel like they are being impeached as well. Some more news lines coming through out of the president that we did nothing wrong. We have the support of the Republican Party. I guess, Kim, to your earlier point as well, a lot of this simply comes down to approval ratings. And help us understand what the similarities are with, say, President Nixon. There are a lot up until a certain point.
Well, in the case of President Nixon and Bill Clinton, there was, at least in Nixon's case, that took a long time, that the investigation and the hearings. And over time, over the course of a couple of years, the American public's attitude changed about impeachment, and they were in favor of it. In the case of Bill Clinton, again, it was another long process. And over time, Americans were still pretty much split because I mean, if you look at the difference between the two issues, one was about lying to Congress about a sexual affair, whereas this one's completely different and implicates national security. But there was time. But the politics of the age were a little bit different then. Now we're in a climate in America where the partisan politics is so strong and obviously is damaging to the functioning of the democracy that I'm not sure that the polls will change no matter how long this impeachment process goes or for how short a period it goes. I think a lot of Americans initially felt that because the election was only a year away, that it would be better just to focus on the election. However, the Democrats' hand was forced when the whistleblower made his complaint.